here with Sydney Youngblood-Blanton, head golf coach at Southeastern Oklahoma State University. How are you doing today, coach?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. So I introduced you as the head golf coach because you're the head men's coach as well as the women's coach at Southeastern. So can you
hmm
tell me what it's like to be, both, the women's coach and the men's coach? Because I know, most coaches are just either the men's coach or just the women's coach. But tell me what it's
Yeah,
like to coach, two teams.
yeah, for sure. So being at a Division II located in Durant, Oklahoma,
Hmm.
um, there's several other coaches within our programs and athletics departments that are both men's and women's coaches. And so I think everybody who does that has a unique spin on it. And so for me personally, being both coaches, you find out how easily or terribly bad you are at multitasking. And so for me, being able to balance both, I have to come up with two different, most of the time, two different practice schedules, qualifying schedules, make sure all of the tournaments line up so where I can go to each, both the men's and women's, and not have anything overlap. And so it keeps me incredibly busy. But I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to be able to, say that I do both. And so that's not something a lot of coaches have the ability to say, is that they've done both sides of golf. So
So as you mentioned, you're, born and raised in Durant, Oklahoma, and Southeastern is in
mhm.
Durant, Oklahoma. So can you just tell me a little bit about, what it's like to be the head women's and men's golf coach there and what, what it means to you, especially being from Durant?
Yeah, Durant, I was actually born in Oklahoma City, but my dad's job moved us down here to Durant when I started kindergarten. And so I've been in Durant since kindergarten, went all the way through high school, graduated from Durant High School. Then I went on to play college, and my parents still live here. And so, this has always been home to me. It's been crazy to see how it's grown as a town. And so, but just being able to come back to my town and kind of give back to the game of golf, that part of it was what inspired me to take on this position. I love the game of golf. I have an incredible passion for it. It's such a unique and diverse sport. And so for that, when I got the opportunity to be able to come here and do what I'm doing currently, it was a no-brainer because not only do I love the town of Durant, but I love the game of golf and being able to give back when I can.
Hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about Southeastern? I know it's in Durant. I know it's a Division II school, but other than that, not hugely familiar with Southeastern.
Yeah. So we've got about 5,000 students. So we're kind of in the smaller end of a Division II. And so the campus is smaller, it's quieter. Durant being just a smaller town, it's usually full of people were born and raised here. And so it's a really cool environment. If you're not big into the whole party life, like a ton of the fraternity life type stuff, it's not super loud like your big Division Is can be. But the atmosphere around sports and the community itself is awesome. And so Southeastern is really just a unique blend of everything that you could want in a college experience. So
Yeah, I know this is the first season for the women's team at Southeastern. Can you just tell me, what it's like to, start the women's program at Southeastern? And maybe
yeah.
also how difficult it is to launch, a new program.
Yeah. So this has kind of been in the works now for a couple years.
Hmm.
It's been more hush hush, like, hey, we might start a women's program in the next couple of years. Is this something you think you could do? And at the time I was a GA, and so I was like, yeah, I could probably figure out how to do it. And so once it came time, it was last July. I got a call from my boss, and he was like, hey, you can start recruiting. We're about to release it to the press that we're going to, start a women's program. I was like, sweet. So I was able to start recruiting back in July, which only gave me a year to get a full team, full roster up and ready for for this fall semester. And so that part of it was hard. Obviously, most people have already found a college who are 2023 grads. Most of the people who were going to enter into the transfer portal were not in the transfer portal yet, being that early in the 2022-23 season. And so it was a lot more difficult than I had predicted. But once I kind of got the train rolling, got some more commits, and national letters of intent signed, it kind of steamrolled and more people wanted to jump on board. And so I think that kind of helped a lot for sure. But it was definitely one of the most difficult things I've had to do. So
Yeah. Coach, can you tell me, just how you got started playing golf? What age you began playing, and what drew you to the game of golf?
yeah, for sure. So I grew up playing every sport I could under the sun. I even played football, basketball,
Okay.
softball, soccer. I played everything I could get my hands on just because I loved athletics. I loved being a part of a team and just kind of being able to, have fun doing it. And so I played golf here and there with my dad growing up. There are pictures of me from 18, 20 months old with a putter that's probably two times my height and a ball in my hand. And so it's kind of been a part of my life the entire time. But I didn't really want to start doing any of it until I was about 11. And that was really when the fire was lit underneath me. And so once I was about 11 or 12, I started ripping out Golf Digest magazine articles that my dad had, glued them in a notebook, like a journal that I had not written anything in, and just glued each page and really kind of started teaching myself how to play the game of golf. The foundations of the swing, how to grip a club properly. And so that was kind of my beginning. My parents saw what I was doing every night before I went to bed. And that was when they decided that they wanted to invest in some lessons. And so I began taking lessons from my sorry, still current swing coach, Kevin Johnson out of McKinney. He was my first and he's been my only coach. He's really helped guide me on this whole journey. Even getting into college, he taught me the whole process and whatnot. And so, but what really drew me to golf was there was one Sunday in particular, there's an LPGA event on. And this was when Annika Sorenstam, Lorena Ochoa, like they were all still on tour, early 2000s for sure. And so I'm sitting there watching it with my dad on a Sunday, and I'm just watching how effortlessly Annika is just like lapping everybody with her talent. And I was just sitting there to watch how graceful she was with her golf swing and how she just seemed to be having so much fun. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, that's what she's doing, I want to do. And so, really, Annika was kind of my inspiration and my draw to golf back in the early 2000s. And so that was kind of what started me in my passion for, even ripping out the Golf Digest magazine articles and gluing them in, teaching myself, and then eventually getting into a swing coach. She was kind of who inspired me to do what I wanted to do. So
Yeah. As a junior, you had a stellar junior career. Highlighted by you won an HAGA tournament, you played USGA championships.
mhm.
Besides putting in a lot of hard work, a lot of time, practicing, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Besides that, what do you think made you not only in Oklahoma but throughout the country? What made you a successful player as a junior?
Yeah. Great question. I think what made me different and such a great athlete was the fact that I just had that fire and that will to want to be the greatest.
Hmm.
There's a lot of high school athletes around the country who say that they want to play, Division 1 ball or even Division 2 ball, but they don't put in extra time after practice. What they do at practice is what they do. And I was trying to find every avenue, everything I could, anything I could to give me a leg up. One of my inspirations in that was Tim Tebow's like get 1% better every day. And so in my head, I was thinking, how can I get 1% better than everybody else today? If it's waking up at 4:30, going to a 5 a.m. workout before school, then that's what I'm going to do. If it's after our school practices, staying another 2 hours and working on my own practice, then that's what I'm going to do. And so I think it was just simply that fire that I wanted to be great. And I knew I had to do what it took. Like I knew it wasn't going to be fun. There were going to be things I was going to miss out on. High school football games, basketball games, friends' birthday parties. There were things that I knew I was going to have to miss in order to be great. And for me, it was, yeah, I'm willing to do it. this is what I want to do, and I'll sacrifice what I have to get to that point. And really, I think that's kind of what made me as good as I am. So
And then in high school, you were a four-time state champion. Can you just tell me what it meant to you to win those four state championships in high school?
yeah, for sure. So going into high school, one of my Oklahoma role models, her name was Megan Blonyan. She played golf at Oklahoma State. She was 4 years older than me, and so she had just finished her 4 year stint. She went four state titles in a row as an individual champion, and then went to Oklahoma State. And I wanted to be just like her. She was so in my head as a junior golfer, she was the coolest thing. And so I thought, all right, if I want to do what I want to do and be able to go play, Division 1 golf, this is something I need to do. And so I wanted to follow in her footsteps. And so that was kind of what led me to wanting to do it. And then once that last putt fell my senior year, um, the feeling is incredible. It's one of those things and honors that I'll never ever forget in my life. Being able to say that not only did I win one, but I won four is just, like I said, it's an incredible honor, and being able to say that you did it, in and of itself is just, it's very awesome. So
Yeah. Then after high school, you attended and played college golf at the University of Oklahoma.
mhm.
Can you tell me, growing up, being from Oklahoma, was playing for the Sooners always your goal, or did you have your sights set on, attending other schools?
Funny you asked that. So growing up, my dad took me to Oklahoma State football games. And so I was a Oklahoma State cowgirl through and through. I loved Stillwater, Oklahoma. I was like, once I started golf and I figured out that that was the golf school basically of America, I was like, that's where I want to go. I want to figure out how to get to Oklahoma State, especially just growing up, going to their football games and being able to be a part of that atmosphere and all that. It was just awesome as a kid. But once I started getting into the golf world a little more seriously, started winning events, and getting on the radar of other coaches, I had quite a few offers from other Big 12 schools, SEC schools. But for me, it was picking the University of Oklahoma came when I decided. So growing up in Durant, we're kind of a isolated town. We don't have a ton of amenities, specifically designed for golf around here. You either have to go to like McKinney, Dallas area to get any decent teaching or any decent golf clubs or anything like that. And so, but we have a golf course about 25 miles from here, and that's one of the closest ones that we've got. And so growing up, I didn't want to go to a school where I had to drive a long ways to get to our practice facilities. And so that was one of the things that drew me to the University of Oklahoma, and one of the bigger things that caused me to commit to them and go to the university. One of the other things was I have a lot of family in Oklahoma City. My parents are from Oklahoma City, and so just being able to be surrounded by family, if something's going wrong, I don't have to drive 2.5 hours back to my parents' house. I've got family 5-10 minutes from campus, and so that was one of the biggest draws for me, was just being able to be with family. So
So you were saying you grew up an Oklahoma State fan, you're a cowgirl. What was it like, for you to play and represent the Sooners? Were your family and friends, were they supportive of your decision not to go to Oklahoma State instead to go to Oklahoma? What
oh
did it
yeah,
mean to you to go to Oklahoma, growing up
yeah,
as an Oklahoma State fan?
yeah, for sure. My dad was probably the biggest Oklahoma State fan in our family, next to my grandmother. And so once I made the switch and was like, hey, I'm gonna go to the University of Oklahoma, everybody jumped on board. There was never any like, why are you doing this? Why are you going back on Oklahoma State, the school that you grew up with? Um, they were super supportive. They bought Oklahoma stuff. They came to everything that they could and supported me in OU athletics. And so that was never anything that I had to worry about from their support and that side of it. But being able to play for the Oklahoma Sooners for 4 years was is probably going to be one of the highest honors that I carry. Being an Oklahoma Sooner is just, it was an awesome, awesome experience. I've made lifelong friends. Being an Oklahoma Sooner that I can't say that I would have had anywhere else. I also had a ton of life experiences going through Norman that I think have molded me into who I want to be today as a, as a woman, but also as a coach. And so, that's, I can't ever thank enough what Oklahoma did for me during those 4 years.
So I'm interested to know. So you're a former college golfer and now you're a college head coach.
Hmm.
Was there anything that you learned, maybe from your coaches or just from your college experience? Is there anything that you learned from that you take now being a head coach?
Yeah, for sure. I think if you don't look back on any experience that you've gone through for an extended amount of time, wherever and whenever it may be, in college, I think is a big adjustment for everybody. You move off by yourself, you try to figure out how to live on your own, and if you're working a job and going to college, you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet type of thing. And so I think if nobody learns from those experiences, then I think it's a wasted experience. And so for me, being able to sit there and look at what my coaches did and go through what they were wanting us to do and figure out what was successful as a as a golfer, and then getting feedback from my teammates during those times, it's you learn a lot going through those with your teammates, because you're like, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Or you do this and you're like, whoa, like that's going to make me an excellent golfer. And so from that, I learned a lot of the stuff I take my golfers through, as far as drills and competitions and things, I got from my coaches when I was at OU. And then one of the probably the more important things is just the relationship aspect between a coach and a player. That was something I really took away from the University of Oklahoma, is being able to not only balance that relationship, but make sure that like I am your coach, but I also want you to know that I care about you as a human being, but also as a golfer. And so that was a big, big takeaway I took from the University of Oklahoma, and my coaches there specifically, was being able to let other people know that golf isn't the most important thing. Who you are as a human being is. So.
So I've gotten to talk with some players who are now currently on the Women's All Pro Tour.
Hmm.
You played on the Women's All Pro Tour, I believe, for 2 seasons.
Hmm.
So can you just tell me about your experience playing on the Women's All Pro Tour and what your professional career was like for those short 2 seasons?
Yeah, for sure. So that was ultimately my dream once I watched Annika when I was 10 or 11 years old. When I watched her dominate, I wanted to be in her shoes. I wanted to get to the LPGA. And so for me, the WAPT seemed like the best option, financially, because Q school these days is super expensive. And obviously, Q school isn't a guaranteed entry into the LPGA. And so with the WAPT, excuse me, um, it was kind of a stepping stone. I had opportunities to make money doing what I love, but also have opportunities to get exemptions into Symetra Tour events, which is now called the Epson Tour. And so for me, that felt like the best option. And I enjoyed my time on the WPT. They really care about the players. Um, it was really, really beneficial because they kind of stay local to my area specifically, kind of that southeast region. And so I really felt at home when I traveled, because most of them that I played in were in Texas or Arkansas. And now they have a few in Oklahoma. And so being able to be a part of that and kind of stay local to places that I've even played as a junior golfer, I think that was a really unique experience. I was saddened that, I had to call it quits after 2 seasons, but that's just kind of how the tables ended up for me. So.
Yeah. I asked this next question because I have a little bit of experience. At my home course here in Connecticut, they had an Epson Tour event So I know how difficult professional golf, you're not like on, the LPGA tour, the PGA tour, how
Hmm.
difficult it can be, a
Yeah.
lot of players, were scrambling for post housing. They were having to dodge the rain, a lot of stopping and starting. So I
Oh
asked
yeah.
this next question. Did you always want to get into coaching, or did your priorities shift when you were out there, on the WAPT? You thought, professional golf is not for me. I want to shift my priorities into, becoming a coach someday.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. For me, playing on the WAPT was a lifelong dream. Just being able to be a professional golfer and be able to say, this is how I make my money. However, my freshman and sophomore year of college, I ended up with a shoulder injury that just would not go away. And I ended up having surgery on it my sophomore year of college. And so there was always a possibility that it might not work. They were like, hey, it's experimental. We don't know if this is going to last forever. And it's lasted me up until this point. And so while I was on tour, just the repetitive motion, and that's just all I did was golf, golf, golf. And so doing that motion over and over again, it ended up hurting and causing the same issues in my left shoulder. My right shoulder was the one I had surgery on in college. And so once that kind of started happening and the injury started building up, I thought, this isn't going to be healthy in the long term for my body, as well as what I want to be able to do later in life. And so that was kind of the turning point for me, was just the nagging injuries that just kept coming, and I couldn't keep them away. With therapy, working out, like they just would not stop. And so that was kind of what made me call it quits. And at that point, I still love golf. And being in this community, there weren't a ton of options for someone like me at my age to be able to put myself into a golfing capacity. And so I'd have to go to Dallas or something to potentially become a pro at a clubhouse or whatever. And so I think what ended up shifting me to coaching was thinking back on my swing coach, Kevin. And so I knew how much joy he had with his relationships with his players. And I thought, that could be something I consider. And swing coach was actually the first one I considered quite heavily. Um, and then, this gig popped open here at Southeastern. I got a call from the athletic director. He asked me into his office one day and was like, hey, would you be willing to take on a GA position? And that was kind of the start of it for me.
Yeah, you just mentioned, can you tell me about your time being a GA, how that came about and what your experience was like?
Yeah, for sure. I was at a tournament on the WAPT when I got a call from our athletic director, Keith Baxter. He called me and said, hey, is there a time that you could come in and have a conversation with Miss Cherry and myself? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm at a tournament right now and I'll be gone next week. Is there a time we could do it in 3 weeks or so? And so we sat down and talked, and he was like, hey, is there any possibility that you would want to be a GA and get your master's? And I sat there for a minute and I was like, yeah, like having a master's would never hurt anybody. So yeah, like I would love to do that. And he goes, okay, as long as you can handle all the golfing aspect, we'll hire somebody as like the head coach to handle all of the compliance side, the paperwork, the driving, all that. He was like, we just need somebody who knows golf. And so that's kind of how that came about as a GA. I was able to get my master's, and I only technically GA'd. I was in that position for 1 year because the head coach ended up leaving the following year. And so right after that, they called me into their office and offered me the full-time head coaching position.
I have three more questions I definitely want to touch on. My question is, what are some major differences you see between, the men's and women's teams, besides things like, I'm sure, I don't know if girls, braid their hairs or, listen to different music, but, seriously, like at tournaments or at practices or maybe working out, what
Yeah,
are some major differences you see between the men's and
yeah.
women's teams?
Um, the men, I think, are in a it could go either way, either good or bad. But they're really focused on their goals. And so for some of my players on the men's side, having that really hard and narrow focus on golf and everything that it's going to take to be a great golfer, I think it can backfire on them. Whereas some of them have more of a relaxed focus where I kind of wish that they would focus a little bit more, and be able to really just kind of hone in, and because they could be great players. As far as the women goes, once we get out on the golf course, they're locked in, they're ready to go. And so that helps me be able to get them through their practices a lot quicker, and a lot easier. Um, but obviously there's going to be a lot of differences when it comes to workouts. Like the men, they want to be able to be strong. They want that, that to be able to look good for women, obviously. And then the women, they're trying to just simply stay toned. They're not wanting to build a ton of muscle. And so having to convince them, hey, it's okay to add weight to the bar. You're not going to turn out to be a She-Hulk. Like it's going to be okay. Just add a little bit of weight. We need some more distance off your tee shots. And so there's quite a few significant differences, but there are also quite a few minute differences between the both of them, because they're all Division II players. They get what it means to be here and what it takes, and so you're not having to sit there and basically plead with one team, hey, I need you to work, and the other team, hey, I need you to like stop working. So
So you're a former player yourself. Do you ever get to compete much, or is that not, or you don't really get to compete much outside of your coaching duties?
yeah, I would love to compete more. Like I said, I still love the game and I love to be able to play. There will be times where we go to tournaments, and the boys are just goofing off on the range, and so I'll goof off with them with one of their clubs, and my game's still there. And so that part of me, when that still happens and I hit good shots and stuff like that, I sit there and I'm like, dang, like, it would be nice to be able to compete um a little more than I do. But I know that this is a full-time job. I know that I have to now recruit for two teams instead of just one. And so through the summers, that's kind of what I'm doing, is making my plans as to, who's going to fit our program, who do I need to go watch, who do I need to reach out to. That's kind of what I spend my free times doing. And so, unfortunately, there's not a ton of extra time for me to be able to go out and compete in USGA events or even WAPT events. It's more being able to compete against my own players. So,
Yeah, I asked that question because I know there's, now your professional career is over. I know there's still a lot of big amateur events, but
yeah, for
I
sure.
know, yeah, I know that your coaching responsibilities can take up a lot of your time.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, can you just tell me, how the fall season went for your teams, what you see for the spring season? And then also, can you tell me, how special a place you think Southeastern is?
Yeah, for sure. The boys just finished their fall season. Dalton McGinnis kind of led our team. He's a senior from Deer, Arkansas. He was top 20, top 15, top 10 at most of our events. And so he kind of led the charge. We've got three other seniors who are kind of slowly catching up to him as far as the competitive edge and being able to go out and shoot well during a tournament and not just qualifying or goofing off. And so I think for the spring season for them, we have a really good chance of doing something special next year. It's going to be up to them and how much work we want to be able to put in this off season. And for the girls, we have one event left. We actually leave on Sunday, and so I'm excited to see what these last like 2 weeks of a break and practice have been able to do for us as far as our scores and where we kind of finish up on the leaderboard. Because this next week's going to be a really competitive field. And so I'm super excited to see how that plays out for us. The girls, as far as what we do next spring, I think we've got a really great chance to kind of come out and surprise people. Right now, obviously being a new team, nobody really knows how this program is going to turn out. And so our rankings for our conference didn't turn out well. So I'm hoping we can kind of go out next year and surprise some people.
Mhm. Can you finally just tell me, how special of a place Southeastern is, especially because, you're from Durant?
Yeah, for sure. Southeastern is just like I've said before, it's a really unique college. Just with the atmosphere, with the fact that it's in a small town. Most of the people that are my bosses, I've known since I was a little kid, and so just being able to be a part of a family-like department of athletics, as well as just the culture that Southeastern brings, and how special the town of Durant is. It's just like I can't begin to express how happy and elated I am to be able to be back in my hometown and be able to coach and be just a part of this golf program and this athletics department. It's just I can't thank my bosses enough for hiring me to be here. It's just I love Southeastern, I love Durant, and I love the game of golf. And this gave me an opportunity to be able to give back to um, not only young men but young women who love the game of golf and wanted an opportunity. And so being able to be in this position to be able to give that back to them as the coach at Southeastern is awesome.